Hello, everybody. Welcome to our study in the book of James. We are currently in James chapter 4, the latter half, and we've been walking verse by verse through this text, seeing what James has to say to us, specifically what James has to say to us as Christians who are longing to grow in our faith journey. My name is Rustin Comer. I'm a pastor at St. Matthew, and this is my good friend Danielle Jones, one of the pastors at a community church. And we're excited to be able to kind of merge our two churches together for this study about what God might be trying to teach us as followers in the way of Jesus. So Danielle, would you like to read chapter 4?
Yes, this is the last few verses. So come now, you who say today or tomorrow we'll go to such and such a town and spend a year there doing business and making money. Yet you do not even know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wishes, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. Anyone then who knows the right thing to do and fails to do it commits sin.
Mm-hmm. So I had this super ancient professor when I was in Jesuit school. His name was Stanley Morrow, who is one of my favorite biblical scholars of all time. And he used to, every time you would ask him to do something, he'd always say, God willing, I'll do it. You know, he was a 90-year-old Iraqi Jesuit and
oh my gosh,
had like 3 PhDs. He was unreal, right? Super brilliant. And so in class one day, we were like, why do you do that? Like, why do you always say, if God wills, I'll do it? And he was like, it's called the Jacobean condition, and it comes out of the book of James. He's like, it's right here. So this is the passage, right, where he got that way of life. And for him, you know, I would say that he lived this very deeply. Like, he just really believed that, like, for the part of his life that he had control over, he would give his yeses and nos. Mm-hmm. But there were all different realities of life that he didn't have control over, right? Like,
yeah,
things that would pop up that he couldn't control. So he would say, yes, if I could, yes, in the things I can control, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, maybe not.
Yeah, it's so obviously COVID has really helped us realize this in a new way. I mean, if we would have read this a year ago, we would have had a really different image and sort of thought in mind about this. But now we've all been in this space where the plans that we used to make, the regular things we used to do, are on hold. And I have learned for myself that being present to the moment is not only about all I can handle in this phase of life right now, but it's I'm happiest when I do it. You know, when I just say, I'm right here with Rustin talking about the book of James, and I don't think about the next 5 things or the last 5 things. It's so much more satisfying and good, you know, to be in this kind of space. And I think that's what James is trying to tease out. And then I think he teases out too that, you know, we're kind of arrogant when we get down the road making plans too far, because we don't know what'll happen to us physically, emotionally. Now we don't know what's happening in the world around us. And so I think it really is a space of trusting that God brings us what we need, instead of maybe grabbing for what we most want.
Yeah, I think this is one of those rare times in history, right, where we probably align as chaotically into James's world as any other time in our human history, right? Like, where James and them didn't know if they were going to be crucified, right? Like, so to be making like long-term realities didn't make sense. You know, like, we're in this, we're not going to be crucified, right? But we're in this, God willing.
But God willing, to use the Jacobean.
So, but we're, you know, we are in this place of like, we don't know.
Yeah.
You know, we don't know what's going on and all of this. And
it's the 2020 joke, right? Like, oh, it's 2020. Oh my gosh. So last week, my daughter's school called at noon and said, you have to pick up your kids now because the main sewer line backed up into the school.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, of course it did. And then on Wednesday, so late Tuesday night, we get another call. Like, we actually didn't fix it. It's backing up again. School's canceled tomorrow. And I turned to my husband, Brian, and I was like, this is a metaphor for life right now. Like a mainline sewer backup. That's what we're all living in 2020. So it just felt like totally appropriate. But I have to tell you that I would have been so much more frustrated 9 months ago about my kids' school being canceled, unplanned 2 times in 1 week.
Yeah.
And I was this time. It was just like, you know what? We know how to roll with this stuff now. And so there is this freedom. I think, what James is saying is listen to God. And God, that peace comes, in releasing the plan and giving it over to God.
Yeah. It's funny. Your husband and I, Brian and I, are both like efficiency junkies.
Champions?
We're like junkies about it. Like like I read Fast Company, I read Harvard Business Review because I want to learn what's the next way that I can like cut 5 minutes off my life to have 5 more minutes to do the thing I want to do while I'm doing 3 other things.
Yeah.
Right? And like so many of those efficiency people always say like, listen, the idea that you can multitask is a false idea. Like, yes. Because you can't split your mind's focus. And so get the thing done, then jump to the next thing, and they give you ways to become more efficient at doing more in a day, but not doing more simultaneously.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's the part of the junkie in all of us as Americans in this moment pre-COVID was we were all looking for how do we do more, right? Like,
right.
How do we do more? And in the process of doing more, forsake our family, forsake our work, forsake, and I think part of what COVID has taught us from a spiritual space is how to live more like James is calling us to live is like, yeah, like this is what I think we're going to be able to do. And I'm going to listen really deeply and I'm going to try to live as faithfully as I can in this moment. And I'm going to trust God for the rest of it. And if we have to adjust, guess what? We've learned over the last 6 months that we can adjust.
Yes, we have.
That we're not as static as we thought.
Yeah. And the final tagline is really interesting. I mean, the final thing that James says in this chapter is, as it is, you're already full of your grandiose self. So stop with your planning because it just kind of feeds that. But he says, in fact, if you know the right thing to do and you don't do it, for you, that's evil. And so I think it's interesting because it to me, there's this connection where our hyper planning and, trying to achieve more in less time and have these amazing plans about how our life's going to go or what we're going to do next can keep us from doing the right thing. And so I think that James is trying to say, stay present in the moment because then the right thing will emerge and it will be good. And if you're not doing the right thing, you're not doing good in the world.
Yeah, this is also, not only do we get the Jacobean condition in this, but we also get the sin of omission. Like that idea that you have sins of commission and sins of omission. Like this is where we get this idea is like James saying like, listen, it's not just about doing good. It's also about if you know that there's good to be done and you don't do it, that's sinful too.
Yep. Shame on you.
Again, what James is doing, it appears to me, what James is doing is he's taking a lack of maturity and he's saying, wait, you thought it was good enough just to do good? It's not.
Yeah, right.
Like there's more to it. Like if you see good and don't do it, like there's always gonna be more good to do. And it's your responsibility. Somebody else's, it's yours.
Yeah.
And so, it's I had this moment. I haven't had a lot of moments like this. But I was driving to work here in Northern California and we live in a super quiet neighborhood. And in California, for those in Minnesota, there are people who sit on street corners under tents, under umbrellas, and they sell fruit, fresh fruit, and they'll cut it up for you and do all this stuff. It's so good. And so our fruit woman was at the corner and she had all her fruit out and it's not all cut up now because of COVID. So they kind of give you full fruit, but, and next to her was this guy that was just like screaming stuff. And my window was down, cause it's beautiful. And so my window was down, I was driving and, I could hear him screaming and he was like asking for help. I was like, this poor lady, right? He's been screaming at this corner for God knows how long. So I pull a Yui and go back and I'm like, what do you want? And, you know, it was classic pastoral story, right? Of this guy had been kicked out of his house, needed help, needed to go to an apartment, hotel, that
Hmm.
sort of thing. And it was the moment pre the U-turn. I was headed to church. I was headed on my way. And I thought, you know what? I don't want to deal with this. And it was just that space of like, Rustin, if you were on that corner, would you want somebody to stop?
Hmm.
Uh, like the Spirit checking, right? Just
Right.
like, now I've driven past 1,000 people the Spirit hasn't checked me on. But at this point in my faith journey, like if the Spirit checks me, I'll turn around for it.
Hmm.
Because it's just over time, it's just when that happens, I feel comfortable. Now, again, we can talk about the safety of that. We can talk about all of that. I hear you. Don't
Yeah.
say no. But like, I felt like the Spirit was calling me to do it. And I responded and was able to help this guy. And because the good that was there to be done for me to drive on would have been wrong.
Hmm. Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
learn that the more we grow in our faith.
Yeah. To listen. Yeah. To respond to I would say respond to the nudges, right? And the nudges are usually not that big of a deal. Usually they're not even go back and talk to the guy on the street corner. Usually they're like, should pick up the phone and call Rustin.
Yeah.
Or you should really check in on this person who you know is struggling. Or yeah, send that card or do that. I mean, it's usually these really small things that still matter a lot. So yeah.
Totally. Well,
Well,
so may you do that, right? Like, as our challenge for today is not only to do the good we're doing, but to, when we see good that we're not doing, to respond to it, to be people who trust God's timing, to be people who um, are looking at where God's at work and not promising more than we can.
yeah. Amen.
So go in peace.